Order the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors. We'll start with an invocation by myself and Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller. Dear Lord, please help and watch over this board to make the best decisions for the county and also our clients of the Service Authority. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Miller, is there any amendments to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, moving on to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, is there any online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moving on to reports of members of the board.
I'm just going to give a quick report because I just came back. So one of the things we talked about in many things at VACO, we talked about water, we talked about energy, we talked about transportation. But I want to reiterate that I think we should investigate more options and make sure we do a thorough looking before we absorb the service authority into the county. I know it was already voted on and I was a no vote, but I think it's very important, and I don't think that we have investigated all our options and done the best for our constituents or our clients, and we should do better. Thank you.
Mr. North?
Hi, thank you. Just real quick, I had a chance meeting with a representative from AMI doing the meter installs, or actually he was doing an update on things, and I was very impressed with his technology and what he was able to do. Just from his vehicle driving by, made these updates and stuff to the system, and I've been very pleased with what I've seen so far on this project. Thank you.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question for the interim general manager. My understanding last week, or maybe the week before, one of our employees was involved in a motor vehicle crash with another, I think it was a school board owned vehicle. Is our employee all right? No injuries?
Yes, ma'am. There were no injuries at the scene. I think there were some students that were on the bus that they ended up having to transport that complained of dizziness. Mr. Eisenbeis could probably update you on the status of the vehicle, but it was, our employee was okay. He was en route to a call, I believe, at Oakland Park for a leak, and was basically at Port Conway Road and Route 3.
People stopped in front of him. He was able to stop, but the school bus rear-ended him, which
Okay.
actually rendered our dump truck inoperable now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it repairable, or is it going to need to be replaced, or?
It's already pretty old. We were looking at a replacement already, but we just have to get an estimate. Nothing works in the truck now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka. As far as my report, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the meeting in person at our last meeting when we voted for the service authority to merge into the county. My son was actually sick. I was online, but for some reason, you guys were not able to hear me. However, I do believe that it is in the best interest of the service authority clients and the county. There will be better oversight and accountability. The one question that I do have, and I did get a couple of questions from some of the constituents, was about the grant as it relates to getting a grant for the service authority infrastructure. And I wasn't really sure how to answer that, so I'm hoping that maybe you can provide some clarity on that.
Is there a specific question about it, or is there
Just in relation to the grant and the county, I guess, taking over the service authority, is it only going to be in effect if the county does take over the service authority, or could we get a grant separately if it doesn't get voted?
No, it is not tied to the county merging with, or the service authority merging with the county. That's not part of the grant. The grant was obviously issued to the service authority, and we're assuming that if you go forward with this merger, those kind of details in terms of working out the transfer of information and transfer of data to the county would be something that would be part of this process, this step-by-step process, and that would include responsibility for and oversight for the grant, which is currently with the county's finance department, and our engineering department are working on it. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of major impact to them. And we investigated, obviously, whether or not this would impact the money, or it would impact the county's financial situation, or it would impact the service authority situation, and we were told that that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just make one more? I just remembered it. I want to follow up about DEQ, getting some folks from DEQ. I spoke to somebody from DEQ. I did not realize there's so many sub-departments in DEQ, especially for our list of things we were looking for. So they had requested if maybe in January they could start finding folks to come to each of our meetings online and give us information and answer questions. But finding one point of contact might be a little difficult. So I said that was probably a good idea to wait till January. And so I just wanted to give you an update on that. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Moving on to public presentations. First up is Emboden with the monthly utility report. Is Mr. Mark Emboden here?
Madam Chair, so their normal process is they need to be a little bit beyond like the 15th of every month. And so because this meeting was just, we're a little early in their process. So they have provided an interim October monthly report, and I'm happy to, we can walk through it if you would like, I guess. Is that available? Okay, it is on the screen, so we could walk through it. But I think that their plan will be that they come to the December 5th, then they would be available on the December 19th meeting as well to give you a November report, and probably I assume on the 5th they would give you more information that would be available on the October report, which is this report. The issue that they have is that they have to close out after the 10th, and their ability to kind of generate this report and all the volume of it in time for our preparation as part of the agenda and what goes out to you all in the public. I think they can't make that. So you have that, Mr. Dines? Okay. Perhaps I can ask Mr. Eisenbeis to just come up and do a little tap dance on the what's going on with his maintenance part that's related to this. And you could probably brief us on what happened at Perkins Corner with the line splitting apart. Could you provide that information? I think that was one of their things on the Perkins Corner wastewater plant.
At Perkins issue overnight, a recycle line broke that runs across the top of the plant. It just happened to end right at the edge of the plant where it broke, which caused sludge to run off the end of the plant, around the plant, and out into the woods. It's quite an extensive cleanup. Since then, we have replaced the pipe. We replaced all the boxes. We've been working on the filters there, and our whole process there now is a little bit better. Replaced several of the instruments there, so the surge tank that's operating now can take that extra flow if there's an issue. So we've done several repairs over the last couple of weeks there. Other things are the mixers at Dahlgren, influent pumps. Dahlgren has been the last 2 weeks almost solid, working on filters, the press. We've had several issues with reuse pumps. We're coming to end of life at Dahlgren with a lot of things, and it's catching up with us fast. It's been, with Imboden and ourselves, it's been 3 weeks of just one thing after another, big items that we've had to either replace. We've had some replacements for it, but it's still old equipment going back in place of old equipment. Their operations have been great. We're trying to clean out digesters currently at Dahlgren, which is 6 tanks that have to go down 16 feet. And once they've got their part done, we're gonna have to come in with a jet vac and actually back those tanks out. That's part of what DEQ's been wanting us to do. It's just gonna be a week-long process. We're trying to schedule for after Thanksgiving, but just trying to make all that work in the time frame it is and whatever the temperatures might be. It's gonna be a big task, big lift for us. We're currently putting in a temporary reuse pump so they can actually run the press faster there. We have one out to be repaired, but it is unrepairable now. We have to get a complete new one, which cut half the reuse water to the plant. So we have to shut off the whole upper part of the plant to actually press and then turn that off and then run the upper part of the plant at the same time. So it's a lot of back and forth. The other ones are doing pretty good. We have a little chemical issue. We have a new chemical vendor supplied a different chemical to us, which caused chemical lines to coagulate with the different chemicals, and we've been cleaning out chemical lines for a week. But we've got that under control, and we're just trying to move along with heat tapes and heaters working and that kind of thing. We have Monmouth Tower that is almost 50% cleaned and ready to be repainted. That'll probably be going online someplace 3 to 4 weeks maybe. We'll be starting to refill that. But our water systems and wastewater has been doing really well, really well.
I'm happy to walk through this if you would like me to. I don't know that, I guess we're having trouble getting it up on the screen, but I'm happy to walk through their report if you'd like. I can't do justice to some of the chemical terms and the pronunciations of those.
I have going back to Perkins Corner, what is the timeline right now about getting those both offline?
Getting Perkins.
Perkins and Oakland Park and taking them to the hop yard. What is our update on the timeline?
So it's my understanding that our folks are working with RK&K, which is the engineering firm that we have working on this, and they are developing the design portion of it in terms of the lines that will run away from Perkins Corner, the water and the wastewater portion of it. And I don't have a year. Do you have one?
We're currently
because you're working with them.
60% drawings right now.
Okay.
Our next step is easements and VDOT to give us access down Port Conway, where we're going to cross roads and how we're going to be doing those crossings. But the pipeline's almost 90% laid out. There's a little more surveying to do, but we're looking at some drawings real soon to be able to actually get some prices.
And then I assume that once this all is prepared, we submit it to DEQ and VDH, and they have to go through their review process. But I can get that information for the next meeting. I can have, and if Mr. Young was here, he'd be able to provide you an update. But I can get that information. I can get it in for that meeting, or I can get it as soon as I get it, I can put it out to the whole board.
I'd appreciate it because, we've had a lot of issues recently at Perkins. It is an old plant and it doesn't have a lot of life left, so I just wanted to know the status of it. Thank you.
So do you guys want to hear the update from Bowdoin tonight, or should we just wait until we can get the full report next week? Yeah. You okay with waiting? Okay, we're okay with waiting then for that. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on to Ms. Lackey, County Attorney's report.
Good evening. I have a series of short updates to give you all. First of all, with regard to the proposed water leases that I mentioned at the last meeting, one of them has been finalized at the staff level. So I anticipate that with Ms. Fish's help, that'll be advertised for a notice of public hearing for your next meeting. That is a proposed lease for the Monmouth Water Tower by Celco Partnership, otherwise known as Verizon Wireless. And they did agree to add the same annual escalator for lease payments as the other proposal that we are considering. Also at the last meeting, I mentioned that we had received a request from Birchwood Power Partners to vacate certain easements on the Butzner property. I had those reviewed by our in-house staff, and Mr. Young has some concerns about the proposed vacations, so I responded back to the attorney who proposed the vacations and just let them know that staff has concerns at this time. I haven't heard anything further from them at this point. Also, recently the county has received a notice from Aqua Virginia of a rate increase proposal. So to be clear, Aqua Virginia customers are not Service Authority customers, but in the interest of getting that information to the public and also so that folks are aware that other institutions do have to increase their rates, Aqua Virginia is proposing a rate increase. The State Corporation Commission has authorized an interim implementation of those rates beginning on February 5th, but it's subject to a refund with interest if a final rate increase is not approved by the SCC. The rate increase for water is 33.88%, and the rate increase for sewer is 21.08%. There's also an increase proposed for water and sewer connection fees. Public input on the proposed increased rates is open until April 30th on the State Corporation Commission's website, and a telephonic public hearing opportunity will also be available on April 23rd. And I will post a copy of the essential part of the public comment proceedings in the next agenda packet so that members of the public who might be interested in that can have that available. Another update is with regard to the Freedom of Information Act. In October, the Virginia Supreme Court denied a motion for rehearing in a FOIA case that has some consequences for public bodies as to previous notices of public meetings and how those were conducted. The Virginia Supreme Court has given a broad interpretation of the transaction of public business, such that matters that are within the purview of the board and are likely, quote unquote, to be on a future agenda should not be the gathering 3 or more board members. So in other words, if a quorum, 3 or more directors are meeting pretty much anywhere for any reason, if there is a possibility of if it's likely that some of that discussion or some of that content could be on a future board meeting, you should avoid those type of meetings, or you should contact staff so that we can do the proper public notices, which are generally 5 business days ahead. We have to give a notice of a public meeting. So even if it's not a public meeting that we would typically consider a public meeting like this, sitting at the dais, having an agenda, if it's a citizen information meeting, or something of that matter, then we should give public notices. We don't have to give public notices for things that are clear under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, such as informational public forums. So if there's information being given to the public, but not kind of a give and take and taking in of information, or if it's for purposes of elections, like a candidate appearance or debate, but there is now some uncertainty as to what types of things members of a public body can collectively, more than a quorum, attend together and it be considered a public meeting. So we're hoping perhaps for some legislative clarity on that, but for the time being, exercise caution if you happen to attend an event or an appearance with other directors. And then lastly, I wanted to give an update on the proposed Amazon performance agreement. The Board of Supervisors is considering action on a proposed performance agreement at its meeting tonight. If approved, the agreement provides that Amazon will provide 600,000 gallons per day of raw water. That is, it's a ratification of what Birchwood had offered to do, so that's not an additional 600,000. That's the same 600,000 that was committed by MOU. However, if this performance agreement is approved, it would be provided at no cost to either the county or the service authority. And Amazon has also included language in the agreement that they are willing to continue discussions of a larger offtake of water, but for the time being, they are limiting it to that 600,000 gallons per day, but they are offering it at no cost if the performance agreement is approved. And that's all I have to update this evening.
Madam Chair, I do have 2 questions for the county attorney. Number one, in the water agreement that they'll intend in the future to talk to us, that really should be more definitive as they shall discuss with us more water. And then I have also a concern because it just says they'll provide us water, but it doesn't say what kind of water. It doesn't say quality water, drinking water. It's just water.
So the agreement does contemplate a water services agreement. They did bifurcate that so that that's not already negotiated. It's not part of the performance agreement. So that would address water and sewer needs of the project. It could potentially also include those elements of the MOU that haven't yet been resolved, like the siting and dedication of a site for other facilities, such as a water treatment plant. But the intent is the 600,000 gallons per day is untreated water. That's river water. It's not potable. So it would require further efforts on the part of the service authority to treat that water before it could be used for human consumption.
And then another question concerning the original MOU was, am I correct in remembering that they had a site in there in the MOU that they would give us a site to put the water treatment plant? Is that correct? I don't have it in front of me, so I don't.
Yes, so Birchwood or its successors is obligated to commit a site. They had offered, I believe it's 4 different tax parcels that are under consideration. So at the staff level, we've had a little bit of discussion on that, but nothing definitive yet on a final proposed site. But they do seem, they are committed to providing that site.
Well, my concern is I'm not sure legally, like, what happens for the MOU? So we had the MOU and the performance agreement. If it's not in the performance agreement, does the performance agreement trump the MOU?
No, so the MOU was executed between the service authority and Birchwood, and it can be assigned by Birchwood. So I believe it's still in process, the property being transferred from Birchwood to Amazon, but at that point in time, Amazon would likely be obligated to all of the Birchwood's commitments, and they've indicated that they are willing to do that. So they were willing to include in the performance agreement that they would conclusively honor that 600,000 gallon per day obligation, but it's not replacing the MOU. Although I guess the water services agreement, for purposes of the performance agreement, could be jointly negotiated with what's contemplated in the MOU, but that's not required. So in other words, there are aspects of the MOU that still need to be ironed out. That MOU provided up to a year for negotiation of final terms. So we still have plenty of time to resolve the finer details of completing that transaction.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Lackey? Okay, thank you, Ms. Lackey. I see no board our agency reports, no action items, so we will move on to the discussion items. And Mr. Miller, you're up with the general manager's report.
Okay, so as soon as we can get it up there, you do have the kind of a strategic plan timeline, and there's only 5 bullet items. I mean, we can flush this out as much detail as the board may desire, but we were looking at the 5 that first you've obviously achieved, and that was the first one, which is the 17th of October. You adopted the resolution for termination and dissolution of the service authority, and then tonight, and there is a resolution attached to your report. But tonight you were going to, the Board of Supervisors will consider it and consider the resolution. And the next step would be, we'll go to work obviously immediately, but you know, the primary work I would assume would come in 2024, and that would be developing an organizational chart, an organizational structure for a proposed Department of Public Utilities, assuming that everything is on course. This is all assuming that the Board of Supervisors gives their thumbs up and wants to move forward on it. That is certainly their prerogative. But if they did and we were into January of 24, then that's when we start doing some of the work and developing an organizational structure, developing an organizational proposed budget, you know, what the effective duties, the new opportunities of the department. We would then also begin notifying the regulatory agencies, DEQ, and the Virginia Department of Health, and anybody else that might be involved, to notify them and regarding the plan. 2024, you would also hire a director, department director. It shouldn't be a development director, that's our oversight, but, or a manager, whatever you're going to call that position. You would then, the Board of Supervisors would authorize that position to be formed. Then I think that it's very important, and I would think that this would be something that the supervisors would want done, and that is a resolution establishing the county enterprise fund for water and sewer revenues and expenditures. And you would want that so that you would probably work with like the Davenport folks, or there's models throughout other organizations where you would have, you know, some of these other counties that surround us. We could have, you know, utilize what they've already got in place in terms of how they formed a utility enterprise fund. And the purpose of that is to, again, you know, reinforce that you're not blending your general funds with your with revenue and that comes from the operation of the water and sewer plants. And then you would also, the same thing would be reinforced on the expenditure side as well. So that would be that one process. And then you would, I think, begin the process of transferring assets and the physical property, and obviously Ms. Lackey and would be involved in working with that on us in terms of the actual process of reassigning where, you know, assets are, and, you know, and how they work within the county structure. The last item on there is just a determination of the role of the Board of Directors. I think that's something that Ms. Bender had been requesting, is what becomes of the Board of Directors. Do they continue to stay as a Board of Directors, and you could continue to have your service authority, you know, Public Utilities Department have a Board of Directors or a policy type of a committee that you could utilize? So I think those are things that would be held at a strategic discussion level. And then the the anticipated completion date would be June of '24, and that would be in line of the budget process, obviously, so that it would go into effect, if everything was moving on target, you know, you would want this to go into effect July 1, '24 in terms of a new department budget and whatnot. Now, there may be some bleed over into the next fiscal year because of some of the things that you're doing with DEQ or some of the things you're doing with the Virginia Department of Health, but I think that would be the overview of this. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
I do. Thank you for the timeline. I think it should be a little more robust, but I thank you for it. One thing on the beginning, the processing of transferring the assets and physical property, do we have a more up-to-date list of all of our assets and the actual valuation of all the assets?
I would have to defer that to Ms. Hahn, and I certainly will get with her on that.
Because I think that would be important to know what that is.
Okay.
Any other questions for?
The only other items on my report, there's no updates on the to-do list because the capital items were not really updated. We will provide an update, and if I can arrange it, I'll get one of the representatives from RK&K to come to the meeting on the 5th and give a timeline, give an update on that decommissioning project. Yeah, and I think as a maybe an answer to another question, Ms. Bender, you asked was about Oakland Park. So Oakland Park, the plan on Oakland Park is that you're going to get Perkins done first, and then you would then begin the process. There is some overlap, but not. The other problem is the financial aspect of it too. I mean, I think Oakland Park is going to be a pretty significant decommissioning cost, and we would probably want to have some discussions further on that. But I mean, you know, it needs to be done and it's planned to be done. It's just it's kind of out there a little bit more. Just your meeting schedule, December, as you can see, back to normal, the 5th and the 19th. Holidays, 22nd, which is a Wednesday. So the current county approved time on Wednesday, the 22nd is that everything basically kind of shuts down at noon. Thanksgiving is obviously the 23rd, the day after Thanksgiving. Those are days off, and then same thing on the 22nd of December. You have a half day, and then you have Christmas. So just to show you that. I will tell you this, and we will obviously let Service Authority employees know this. There was a inquiry made at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, and we have some additional information for them about just giving that Wednesday, the 22nd of November, next Wednesday, as a complete holiday instead of a half day. And so, if the Board of Supervisors acts, then it would be my recommendation that the Board of Directors also do the same thing, so there would be uniformity. I don't know that. Question is, would they need to take an action tonight, even though there is no action, or would they follow the personnel policy, so they assume they would just get it?
So the Service Authority follows the county's policy to award the holidays that are enumerated in the policy. So I think some action by the board, if that was how the board wished to proceed, I think it could be by consensus if that's how you all wish, but just confirmation or not that in the event, if the Board of Supervisors does give county staff a full 8-hour holiday on the 22nd, that the Service Authority would follow suit.
So do we have agreement if the Board of Supervisors votes that for it to carry over to the Service Authority?
Would a motion be good for that? So I'm going to try to craft the motion. I will make a motion that that we follow the Board of Supervisors' lead if they allow for a full holiday on November 22nd, correct? 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
And that's it for me.
Mr. Miller, I do have a couple questions. The first question I had was, am I understanding that the Board of Supervisors has on their agenda tonight to vote as an action item for the Service Authority and the merger of the county?
Yes, that's in keeping with the timeline. Now, if they delay it, then obviously that just means that the timeline's delayed a little bit, but it's now in their hands, and I think that was the direction that we took from that joint meeting.
Okay. And then I also I appreciate that timeline. I think that that timeline is a good timeline. It's showing movement forward, which we know that the Service Authority has been in limbo for the last 2 years, and we've been kicking this around. And I just like to see the initiative of moving it forward. So thank you for that. All right. So with that, I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn to Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 at 5:30 PM in the Robert H.